I'm really looking forward to this one. Joining us today, Karl Bickmore, CEO of Snaptech IT. We're also joined by Dave Philistin, CEO of Candor Cloud. We're joined by Gil Salazar, IT security consultant at Wildcat IT. We're joined by Ramon, who is a managed security consultant at Prounlimited. And we are also joined by Wagner, president at Net Concepts AZ. Welcome to the MSS Phoenix. It's lovely to have you. Some new faces, some repeat faces, but you're all very, very welcome. A broad topic, but we have over the last few years been trying to get to the bottom of how we improve this end user MSP MSS relationship. And yes, sorry, just to correct, Gil is in fact Stonebridge MSP. That's right. Sorry about that. But we're trying to improve this relationship, and I don't know if it's got better or worse over the years. And I certainly know that there are many MSPs which are bundling security solutions, which maybe blurs the line between the MSS and the MSP. But before we get into all of that, let's paint a picture. Let's step back and say threat landscape. Dave, let's start with you, mainly because you have been there since the beginning, right? You were there 4 years ago as well. Tell us how this threat landscape for today's MSP has evolved.
You know, I think a lot of which it kind of evolved is the threats. They're getting more sophisticated, right? In these conversations that we're having, you know, I specialize more in the small, medium-sized business. So a lot of the conversations that we have with kind of our decision makers is around the education on why, you know, certain services and solutions are important to protect your interests. And, you know, it would seem like, you know, a lot of the solutions today, it's all these, you know, you mentioned a lot of acronyms and, you know, a lot of the, you know, next breaches in the news aspects of things. It's almost like we're trying to boil the ocean in the sense of, you know, trying to make our point to these customers or our prospects around the importance of it. So, you know, a lot of which is that I feel is, you know, we are moving in the right direction. I think people are getting it more. We just need to get to the point where, you know, customers or business decision makers, or, you know, if you told someone they're going to start a business without an internet connection, that would just almost be like foolish. It almost needs to have that same type of action when it comes to the security aspects of things, because, you know, right now, you know, there's only so many, you know, we have a lot of tools out there, and there's a lot of, you know, different aspects of things, especially when, you know, hybrid and cloud identities and things are, you know, outside our four-cornered, you know, headquarters, so to speak. And who knows, if some organizations may just adopt this work from home model. So I think it's very important for us to, you know, as thought leaders in this space, to start, you know, really educating the, you know, decision makers in these different business units on why, you know, such security measures and, you know, these tools are important.
And you touched on education, and we will get onto that, because of course, you know, how on earth do you get these end customers that won't bundle the latest ConnectWise, for want of a better word, solution? You know, they don't want to spend money on that. So how are you going to get them to spend money on security? Anyway, these are questions we'll come on to. D, you have a sort of an MSS background. It'd be great to sort of get your reflection on maybe how that differs from the SMB area of the MSP, and maybe if you could paint a picture of the threat landscape, that's a good place to start, maybe.
Well, I probably have a slightly different perspective because I was involved in actually delivering the service. And sometimes I heard what somebody said, well, you know, only vendors delivered what they said they were going to. And I kind of chuckled because, as you know, as salespeople, the salespeople promise the world. And then as people trying to deliver, they go, well, geez, how do we deliver all the stuff that they promised? You know, so I think that's a really good challenge for all MSS and MSPs, regardless of what acronym you use, is to have the salespeople be very close to the actual service that's delivered. So expectations are clear, and as delivery people, you can actually deliver and keep a customer happy. So not always an easy thing.
No, I like that, and you also raise a good point. When we do this event in Germany, it's a very different flavor, different culture. Yeah. Okay, but one thing that Germans like to say is it's impossible to take a technical specialist and a sales specialist to one meeting, because You do not want to meet the sales specialist. You want to meet the technical specialist, and you do not appreciate them both being there. So you need a super.
And the sales perspective doesn't probably like the technical person, and the technical person says, "You're saying we're going to do what?" Right.
And so somehow that could be the one person, which is
it's a challenge. And then some companies have salespeople that they collect their commission and walk away and go to sell the next one. Now, well, I get that's great for sales. That's not always the best for delivery.
There we go. Well, I like that. Sales and delivery, not always the same. Karl, what about from your perspective? The threat landscape. How can we deal? Well, paint a picture of the threat landscape, and then how can the MSP become secure towards such a threat landscape?
Well, there's a lot to be said, and I think Dave and Dee have been dead on point. There is a major customer education issue, but from my perspective, I think something that's notably shifted further than before, when we think about nation state actors like the AP10 alert and US CERT and Chinese attackers, they're coming at the MSP tools now. And so now the path of attack is through the provider to the customer, and to get a simultaneous hit on several things all at once. And we've seen way more of that in the last couple of years. And to me, that's just, when you initially talked about what's the threat landscape, I feel like we should all be thinking about what we're doing internally as well as what we recommend to customers, because we are now many of our customers' biggest risk point.
And that multi-tenancy threat vector sort of topic, believe it or not, a few years ago when we suggested it, people said, no, that's fine because we segment everything internally. And anyway, that is an interesting one. But Gil, want to ask you, doesn't it depend on the size of the MSP? Because not everybody could afford to white label some sort of third-party SOC, and not every end user would want it.
Right. The size of the MSP is critical. We're actually a small operations, and I wear both hats. I'm the security guy and the regular IT guy, because I bring that background in there. And, even as you mentioned, I think, Karl, that, we need to know what's going on in our operations, but we rely on a lot of these companies that we're seeing today, the tools, and hate to keep picking on SolarWinds, but we use them. And so having their little hack, we were like, oh, we're doing good. We're using SolarWinds, reputable company, yada, yada. And then something like this happens, like, oh, now we're vulnerable. How do we have to look at that? So it's a never ending game of catch. You're trying to find out what's going on and what's not, and try to stay on top of that. But having a small shop, it gets a little more critical. So we do have to work with the vendors, the sales people, and see what fits for us, but then also what fits for our client, and what can we do with them.
And then because I know, Gil, you have a DoD perspective as well. CMMC might force everybody's hand if all of government uses it, and then corporations start. Anyway, we'll get onto that, and we do have a CMMC session. Aaron, let me bring you in then. How can an MSP then both secure itself and educate the SMB to buy more security, given that it's actually quite difficult to get the end customer to buy more things?
Well, I wanted to bring an interesting thought to the table first before I get to that, which is that, I started doing this about 25 years ago. And I think, back then doing break fix was normal. So then you get a few years beyond that, and they start talking about, well, if you're not offering managed service provider tools to the table, then you're not doing your customers a service. And I think, somewhere in that time frame, I started to notice that China was targeting some of my small business customers, and a nation state with unlimited funds and plenty of time could be a huge risk. And so you keep having to move the ball, and that's absolutely important. But I've been working on a project in the last couple of months where I've had to flip the script. I've actually had been more of an attacker than a defender. And one thing that really comes out blaring is the issues of privacy and how that privacy that's still lacking. I mean, because you can collect so much information about people, about their network. It makes it a lot easier to attack anyone. I mean, now that everything's in the cloud, it's no longer a hidden network. You know what what servers they have, what possible vulnerabilities they have, and what kind of software the users are using. So if you're not looking at that privacy issues internally, can an attacker look at who this company is doing business with? They find out that you're the one they're doing business with. Can they then figure out what tools that you use and then use those tools to go after your customers? So those are the things that you really have to consider. And I think privacy, even though we talk about it a lot, is still being way overlooked. So especially as we move into an era where even our cars are now collecting, it's like 25 gigs every hour. We are generating 1.7 megabytes of data per second ourselves. So
how does that translate into the world of the MSP? Because then that means you've got all of your different users, and they're all generating the same thing probably on your network. And so how do you secure those digital identities? Well,
I think the main thing is I think people need to be more aware internally. Do attacking. Start attacking yourself. See what you can find out about yourself, your company. There's really good tools out there. Like Maltego is easy to go on YouTube and figure out how to use it. Start digging into your company.
So make a comment on that. I think policy, we got to go back to policy a lot of times, especially with some of our clients, and stress that, because a lot of them don't have policy. And so everybody can come in the company, connect to the network, connect to the guest network, do all the things that you're talking about there. But then you start running into this problem of all those amounts of data you talked about. So with policy, we can say, hey, this is a company network. Maybe we have a guest network that does something else if we want to allow that, but it's a big part of it.
Okay, well, that could hive off some of the risk. Well, let's go back to Dave then. Obviously, we've done a full circle around the room, I suppose. And you're now, your Candor cloud, right? So how has the cloud transformed the secure MSP? And what opportunities and threats do you think it presents?
Yeah, I think, for us, when you hear about these attacks where the hackers are going to the head of the snake in the sense of SolarWinds, it's always daunting for us, right? That's one of the things that keeps me up at night as far as the tools that we use. Unfortunately, we don't use SolarWinds, but that's not to say for, our documentation solution, if they were to get into our IT glue, that would be very impactful to us and our customers. So, there's a lot of tools. There's MFA, obviously single sign-on. Obviously we got to be worried about the insider threat as well. And it's daunting, but I think, as it pertains to kind of moving forward, you can really paralyze yourself in the sense of feeling helpless. But I think, one thing that we do for our customers, and we do it internally here, and I'm sure most of the individuals on this panel and or in this meeting have it as well, is just, some sort of education around email, right? We'll do our own kind of email campaigns, and people clicking on these links of various type of, nefarious type of ask and kind of get a gist of, where users are at when it comes to that information. We can slowly, and that's where I think when you're a thought leader in this space, is that, hey, and that's a service that we give to our customers for free for managed services for up to 3 months. right? So, we're putting some skin in the game to provide that type of visibility and those reports to those decision makers, so they can see exactly like, this is why this is important. This is why we feel like this would be best for your interests. But like I said, the boil of the ocean effect is, I think it's futile, and especially in the space I'm in, some people get it more than others, but I think it's up to us as evangelists to really help, spread the good word of, why such services and, policies and procedures need to be in place, right? So we have some sort of a rule book to go to. And I think from, conversations such as that, people can start to really, buy in and understand the importance of it. So,
well, then let's run with that, Dave. And then I'll go to D with this. Then Dave has, presented the idea of, phishing training, for, free for 3 months, which was really good, right? But does that mean that, in fact, the way to their hearts is a gateway drug almost? The way to train end users into wanting some sort of MDR, CDR, XDR, or anything else is to first get that training piece down.
Well, I mean, it's wonderful to have a service and get people familiar with it, because a lot of people say, well, I don't know I need it until they try it. And then they go, well, this is really good. It is really helpful. I can show that, hey, I reduced, I did it month 1 and month 2. Hey, people are getting smarter. They're managing it better. So I think that's not a bad way to get people to understand the value. A lot of people won't understand, they don't understand the value until they see it.
I got a gift card for getting vaccinated, and I was happy about it, to be honest. So,
I didn't do that.
hey, I was going to do it. Listen, I was going to do it anyway, to be honest. But since you gave me a gift card, thank you very much.
I don't know if this is backwards, but on your screen, on mine, it looks backwards. Can you read security?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So I come from an education background, and we educated till our socks wore off. But the key to this is security, and in the middle of it, you are it.
Right.
We educated that, we use that, and we try to tell the people that that's where security starts.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that education piece, Karl, is it still natural in a panel such as this to talk about the MSS and the MSP being different? Is it still natural to talk about that? Because surely we're not just an education piece away from letting the MSP be a security provider too.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think that, the points that Dave initially made about educating the customer actually generally apply to the vast majority of MSPs as well. And so folks that hang their hat out as an MSSP probably are starting out the gates better educated and more able to. But, when people are out there saying, okay, I'm going to be an MSP that now delivers security services, I still think it's a fundamentally different motion than being an MSSP. There are things that they do that you shouldn't be doing it's red team, blue team concept, right? You can get out there and do some tools and look at your own stuff, but honestly, you really should have somebody else do that, and you should pay them to do it, and they should know how to do it. Because the more you armchair it, the more you kind of sort of do it without really committing to it, the more you really aren't doing it. And I would argue that in today's world, there is no size of MSP that shouldn't be doing things like outsourced SOC threat detection and XDR, MDR, and some form of regular policy manual and third-party audit. I just think it's true. Any business model has to factor that in. And I think it's entirely possible. I've seen very small MSPs do it and very large ones. I've seen ones not do it. But fundamental to the question of MSP versus MSSP, and I think that there's maybe a concept of maybe an MSP that's doing the right thing, and then there are MSPs or MSSPs as well, because security, the whole ground level has to raise, and I think that there still will be a difference between MSP and MSSP, in my opinion. And I don't really want to be an MSSP, excuse me.
Especially now you've got to specialize. Now everyone's a VAR. If threat intel is no longer the secret source, I don't know if the secret source people are still in the audience from previous, but Karl, if I look at Joe Panettari's MSS alert, which to be honest is something that those on the MSP side won't be looking at, right? They might not be familiar with it, just as those on the MSS side do not know about the conference IT Nation. They don't know about it. They have no idea. But yet, Joe Panetta, in his top 200 MSS players, has started listing some MSPs.
Yeah, ironically, we have been listed there, and not that we intended to. We filled out the survey, but I really don't intend to be an MSSP. I just simply want to do a better job of supporting my customers in just good IT, which involves responsible approach to security, IT, and policy. The two are hand in hand. But there is a different world between them. There's a different type of engineer. If you need a security analyst, you're probably an MSSP. If you need IT people that know how to secure an environment, then you're probably an MSP. And I just think that, they're fundamentally different motions. It's why it's difficult to have somebody that can look at logs and analyze the traffic and build a security plan be the same person that might, install a server or migrate Office 365. They're not the same people. That's my take on it. And I don't like mixing in a bad way, but there's no doubt that every MSP needs to raise the bar on being more secure.
I like that. And no, thank you for enlightening us to that, because I learned a few things there as well, especially because anyway, I'll tell you later. Gil, let's reflect back then on this past year. Again, this isn't a COVID event, right? But we have seen an increase in distributed working. Perhaps people have done things at speed, maybe missing a few things this time last year, and maybe we are putting them back in the office now, maybe not. But what has this increase in distributed working done to this secure MSP?
Sorry, can you rephrase that question again? I kind of faded.
No problem. I did go on a bit. Basically, the secure MSP has evolved, hopefully, over this past year. A lot of people have moved to home working and distributed business models. Maybe we're moving back, but before we've moved back, what are your reflections on the secure MSP with more people working from home?
Well, I think that actually presents more problems, because a lot of times they're working from home with their home computer, and little Johnny plays his games on that, or little Emma goes to school. And so they're not looking at the same, even though we have actually, with some of our clients, provided remote access to their work computer, they're still on a home base that could be a danger. So it's provided more challenges, and kind of get those challenges and get us some insight into that home computer. Because if we want to secure their environment, we have to know what they're using. So, and a lot of them don't, it's my home computer, don't touch it.
But I think it's worth noting that a lot more customers are willing to hear about security as a risk because of it too, though. Wouldn't you say that's more true in your experience, Gil?
Yeah, they do. I mean, they want to know, because now their home computer plays into the work where they probably weren't touching it before. It's like, okay, am I secure? Can I do this? And then even the security, I think we talked about the education. Is little Johnny a security risk?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it goes deeper though than just the machine itself. You got to think about routers and printers and everything else that's connected to the network.
Right. The whole environment becomes part of it. It's just like any security framework. Everything plays into it, from the routers and firewalls up to the end user. So
Aaron, do we need some sort of, not DigiVault, but do we need something to stick on a home router, right? So first of all, to analyze traffic, and then by extension, do we need threat intel on everybody's personal home to make this distributed environment actually work?
No, I would say that you just can't trust that home network. That's really what it boils down to. So you have to have some way in your remote, wherever they're connecting to treat it as zero trust.
Very good. And I like that, because we will bring that up in our zero trust under the hood panel a bit later. We're going to look at the algorithm. So that little plug for another thing. I like it. D, then what does this then do to the secure MSP? Now, Joshua Lieberman very kindly has put an article in the chat about to be or not to be an MSP or MSSP. But in your opinion, where does this all leave us?
well, and part of me says, you know, it's, I think somebody else brought it up. It's not just the name that you call yourself, is how do you provide good security services, and the priority of that. You know, part of my brain was going to, okay, when I was part of an MSS, I was competing along with all the other lines of service that we delivered as far as profit and who's delivering and who's costing too much. And a lot of people, unfortunately, think that, well, security costs too much. Not so much anymore. I think people are coming back, but you know, becoming an MS, you can be a secure MSP and have security be part of the services that you deliver versus being the only service you deliver.
One string in your bow. I like that.
Yeah.
And then Dave, maybe your reflection, because I know maybe it's a bit unfair to put you on the spot, but you came in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and now 2021. You know, what is that evolution then? Given that things are cloud-based, given that maybe an architect, as we've heard from before, is the SaaS struggler, not the hands-on person. What does it all mean for the Secure MSP?
You know, I think, you know, obviously, Pelham, because I appreciate you so much. I'm always glad that you invite me to these things for year after year, of course. But I think, you know, there's a lot of, you know, we're bringing up a lot of different aspects to security, right? We're talking about, you know, the tool sets. We're talking about more or less, you know, what is the obligation to, you know, being stewards of IT for our customers, and what, you know, protecting their data and using best practices. Obviously, you know, depending on which technologies are in place, you know, we can, you know, hammer out these low-hanging fruit. But, you know, as it pertains to, you know, your general workforce working remote and, you know, privacy, you know, the machine, they're, you know, using their home machines to connect into corporate resources, you know, all this is kind of, it's really daunting in the sense to really, you know, add some sort of action or security or protections around that, depending on how the end users are connecting, right? So like I mentioned before, it's a conversation, I think, that as things go on, conversations I'm having with decision makers, they seem to be more in tune with the security aspects of things. They're getting the notifications on their Expedient breach or another breach here, change your password. So they're starting to see the landscape of things that are really coming out in the public, and it's causing them to kind of take more action on stuff and know that the security side of things is not a cost center by any means. It's now a way to make sure you protect your interests. And I think that conversation still, there is no elegant way to put it as far as in, you know, my customer sets, but the ball is kind of, you know, moving down the education route, I would say, as far as it being important.
I like it. And certainly our good friend Harry Brailsford at SMB Nation was last year reporting that lots of MSPs are finding education as a good revenue stream, just as much as security. You know, maybe then a nice final question I'll give to Karl. Karl, let's say we do this SMSP panel next year. What will we be talking about? I know it's predicting the future, but what should we be talking about?
I think there's a lot more to be done in the MSP and MSSP space around automation or the automated remediation piece. I feel like that's the only thing that's really going to get some of us into a spot where we can do some of the things at a scale that we need to. Many of us are small businesses and we need help. And the outsourced SOC play is a good play, but a lot of it lacks in the remediation phase inside. So to me, that's where my head's going next is, how can I complete the R of security orchestration and automated response better? How can I make that more efficient, more effective, more repetitive, more scripted, more automated? That's where my head's at.
I like it. I like it. And of course, a few people have been to our AI and automation and security forum, which we ran at Phoenix Snap. Again, thank you to Phoenix Snap. You know, so maybe that is indeed the next thing. But we are over time. I know it's a supersized panel, so there's so much more we could have sort of explored. But please do network in the Discord channel. We've got the profile sharing segments as well. So Karl, Gil, Aaron, Dee, and Dave, thank you very much. Let's give them a big round of applause. I will see you in the audience.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
See you soon. And we got a yeehaw from Joshua. And Joshua, I did post that article inside the Discord channel, which is always good. And in fact, if you would like the link to the Discord channel, it's not that Zoom webinar is bad, right? It is very good for talking, but people have found it a bit easier to share files and share photos and profiles and so on the Discord channel. So that is